Never wanted to be a rapper. This is the easiest job in the world. Getting paid to do some shit you was probably gonna do that weekend anyway.
Jonathan Reed, aka Foxx, aka Foxxamillioyne, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, born June 6, 1983. In the mid-2000s, Southern rap was in one of its most dominant runs. Atlanta had T.I., Jeezy, and Ludacris running national charts, while Baton Rouge, Louisiana was quietly building its own takeover under the street record label Trill Entertainment. Led by the unapologetically raw Lil Boosie and the slick-talking Webbie, Trill had a formula: authentic street tales, unapologetic southern slang, and hooks that stuck in your head long after the beat faded. In 2007, that formula peaked with the release of Wipe Me Down Remix, a bass-heavy anthem that became a staple from clubs to car stereos to college parties nationwide. The song's infectious hook, Wipe Me Down, didn't come from Boosie or Webbie. It came from another Baton Rouge voice, Foxx. While Boosie's gritty verse and Webbie's charisma made the record a hit, Foxx's contribution was arguably the glue that held it together. His smooth, drawn-out delivery on the chorus gave the track its identity and made the record a cultural moment. But in the story of Wipe Me Down, Foxx often feels like the forgotten man. For Boosie, the record was a breakthrough into national mainstream. His voice and presence were suddenly everywhere. Webbie, already fresh off his hit Gimme That, used it to further cement his place in Southern rap. Foxx, on the other hand, struggled to parlay that same exposure into a long-term solo career. His debut album Street Gossip dropped in 2008 under Trill ENT, with Boosie and Webbie heavily featured, but it failed to spark the same momentum. Part of that problem was perception. To casual fans, Foxx wasn't seen as a standalone artist, but as the hook guy from Boosie's crew. Without a distinct musical identity or a hit single of his own outside Wipe Me Down, it was hard to carve out a space in a crowded Southern rap market. Add to that Trill Entertainment's limited national infrastructure compared to bigger labels, and Foxx's name began to fade from conversations. Still, for that moment in 2007, Foxx had a role in one of the South's defining anthems, a record still spun at parties nearly 2 decades later. But for someone who helped give life to a cultural classic, the question remains, why didn't Foxx ever blow up the way his label mates did? What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to C-Note, aka Mr. Miller, on IG for this request. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Foxx is a rapper from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and one of the lesser-known members of the Trill Entertainment roster during its mid-2000s peak. Growing up in the same city as Lil Boosie and Webbie, he was surrounded by the gritty, unapologetic Southern rap culture that defined the region. His smooth delivery and knack for catchy hooks earned him a place within the label's inner circle, leading to features on several Trill projects. His most iconic moment came in 2007 with the Wipe Me Down remix, where his hook became the song's most recognizable element. At the time, Boosie was on the verge of national breakthrough, and Webbie was already charting singles. Foxx, meanwhile, was gearing up for his debut Street Gossip in 2008, which featured heavy appearances from both stars. Despite the buzz, the album failed to produce a hit on its own, leaving many to see him as a supporting act rather than a breakout star. Stunt number 1, Overshadowed by his own feature. When Wipe Me Down Remix hit in 2007, it was the perfect showcase for all 3 Baton Rouge artists on the track. The beat, the swagger, and the energy captured exactly what was happening in Southern rap at the time. But while Foxx delivered the most memorable part of the record, the hook, the song's narrative was quickly dominated by Boosie's street persona and Webbie's personality. In the remix's rollout, media coverage and fan conversation centered around Boosie's ascension, with Webbie as his established counterpart. Foxx was almost never framed as an equal contributor, even though the song arguably wouldn't have been the same without him. The hook he wrote and performed became a cultural catchphrase, yet it didn't attach his name to the record in the way verses did for Boosie and Webbie. Listeners might have known the Wipe Me Down voice, but not the man behind it. This lack of recognition created a strange dynamic. He had a role in one of the most replayed anthems of the 2000s, but didn't get the same career boost it gave his label mates. Without that initial spotlight, building a solo audience was already an uphill battle that few artists recover from, regardless of talent. This also impacted how the industry saw him. Record labels and promoters often gauge an artist's star potential by the response they generate in high-exposure moments. For Boosie, Wipe Me Down proved he could carry a hit into mainstream. For Foxx, it unintentionally branded him as a supporting act, the guy who can enhance a record but not necessarily headline it. And once that perception sets in, especially in a competitive market full of hungry artists, breaking out becomes one of the toughest challenges in music, leaving some trapped in permanent sidekick status. Stunt number 2, lack of distinctive branding. One of the biggest challenges Foxx faced after Wipe Me Down was carving out a clear, memorable identity that separated him from Boosie and Webbie. While his label mates had distinct personas, Boosie with his raw, street-hardened storytelling, and Webbie with his flashy, charismatic swagger, Foxx's brand was harder to define. His smooth, laid-back delivery worked perfectly for a hook, but when it came to solo records, there wasn't a strong image or concept for fans to attach his name to. In music, especially hip-hop, branding is as important as talent. It's not just about having bars, it's about having a presence that fans recognize instantly, whether a signature sound, fashion style, public persona, or a consistent narrative. Foxx's debut album Street Gossip had solid moments, but the marketing didn't highlight a unique selling point. Even the cover and rollout felt more like a Trill ENT group project than a solo launch, which didn't help in separating him from the pack. On top of that, his features and appearances often kept him in the same sonic lane as Boosie and Webbie, making it harder for casual listeners to distinguish his voice or style. While his hook work was undeniable, he didn't have a breakout single that showcased who Foxx was outside the crew's dynamic. Without that, he risked blending into the background of his own career. This lack of distinctive branding not only limited his mainstream potential but also affected longevity. Artists with a strong, unique image can survive off cult followings even when they're not charting. Think of figures like Currency or even Devin the Dude. Foxx never built that kind of identity, leaving him without a firm base to sustain momentum once the initial hype from Wipe Me Down wore off. Stunt number 3, label politics and regional ceiling.
I ain't dropped my album in stores since 06. Hold up on the new album, I would say the label.
Foxx's career was also limited by circumstances of the label he was signed to. Trill ENT was a powerhouse in Baton Rouge and across the South, but it didn't have the same national infrastructure, radio relationships, or crossover marketing muscle as major labels. While the raw, independent energy worked in Boosie and Webbie's favor because they had already built their own strong fan bases, Foxx needed broader exposure to grow his career, exposure Trill wasn't positioned to deliver. In many ways, he was boxed in by geography. The South was exploding during the mid to late 2000s, but within that wave, certain cities and labels had more industry pull. Atlanta had the majors, Houston had Rap-A-Lot's legacy, and Miami had the emerging influence of DJ Khaled and Rick Ross. Baton Rouge, by comparison, was still developing its national connections. Without consistent mainstream push, Foxx's music often stayed regional, limiting touring opportunities and radio play outside the South. Label politics also meant Foxx's priorities were often placed behind Boosie's and Webbie's. With Trill's resources already stretched thin, most of the budget, promotional energy, and networking went toward its two biggest stars. Foxx's projects felt secondary, and in an era where momentum is everything, waiting too long between meaningful releases can kill an artist's buzz completely. This regional ceiling effect left Foxx in a tough position, too big to be a local act, but without the label machinery to elevate him nationally. Without a strong pivot or independent reinvention, the industry tends to forget artists stuck in that middle ground, no matter how talented they are, or how memorable their breakout moment was, especially when younger acts quickly fill the space you once occupied, making it difficult to regain national relevance once the spotlight fades for good. All in all, Foxx's story is one of timing, perception, and circumstance. He entered the national stage with one of the South's most enduring anthems, but never fully reaped the rewards of its success. While his hook on Wipe Me Down remains instantly recognizable to this day, the spotlight quickly shifted to Boosie and Webbie, leaving him in the supporting role in the public eye. Without a breakout single of his own, a strong personal brand, or the full promotional push from his label, Foxx struggled to establish himself as more than a background voice on someone else's hit. That doesn't erase his contribution to Southern hip-hop. Many artists never get the chance to be a part of a record that moves culture the way Wipe Me Down did. For Foxx, that song ensured his name, even if not his face, would live on in rap history. And while his solo career didn't take off, his voice still echoes in clubs, at parties, and in nostalgic playlists across the country. Sometimes one unforgettable moment can be its own kind of legacy. Salute, much respect. But for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.